The Department of Basic Education has been reporting incidents of sexual assault as well as crime at schools in parts of South Africa. Yesterday, the mother of a grade 5 pupil at Morula View Primary School in Mabopane expressed concern about her son's psychological well-being after he was allegedly sexually assaulted by 2 of his classmates. Teacher unions and parents are calling on the department to be hands-on. For more on this conversation, we're joined by Naptosa Executive Director Basil Manuel. Mr. Manuel, a pleasure to have you on the program this evening. Now, in light of these recent incidents of sexual assault in schools, how does Naptosa then recommend that they need to be dealt with and plan to address and prevent such occurrences? In what way are you even collaborating with the Education Department?
Good evening, and thanks for having me. At first, let me say that this has been an ongoing conversation. It can never be an event. It's a process. And a few years ago, we started this process, and we've been talking to the department, and we've had various talk shops at first and various action plans. And some of them need to be brought to life. But I don't want to minimize the importance of actually talking and understanding what happens in some schools and in certain areas. Because we think we know, but actually you don't know until you are in a situation. And the department is even a little further removed because they are not at the coalface. So the first part is that we engage and are party to the engagement, because remember that the teachers involved are inevitably our members. And sometimes, and tragically, they are part of the problem. Sometimes they are, of course, part of being victimized by perpetrators around the school.
Right.
So it's a difficult one, but we get involved in trying to also oil the wheels of a discussion. But now we're putting pressure so that we can see more action taking place. Action, and I mean by that, we've got some really good plans on paper, but how do we get them to the schools, and how do we get schools to act on them? Such as better training for principals, because a lot of this is a management issue. Also to see that people know the procedures, people know how to act. When we think about the special schools where there have been things happening, it is about a large staff, but a large staff that seems to be blind to some of the things happening. And that is where we want more intervention. But it's training. And remember, we don't have teacher counselors where we can do prevention instead of trying to deal with the problem afterwards. So even retraining teachers to be teacher counselors. And this is where we are primarily playing our role.
So let's look at this investigation into the alleged rapes and ill discipline at the Hope Learners with the Special Education Needs School. I mean, it reveals concerning incidents here. As the Executive Director of Naptosa, how do you believe the education system can better support students, especially with special needs, and also ensure their safety?
Special needs schools are a very, very difficult terrain to be in, and you need absolute specialists. And I must say, in many of these schools, we have really, really good people. But as soon as there's a lapse in that, first of all, the quality of the people being there. Secondly, of course, the quality of knowing, of having that sense of duty and care. Because unlike your ordinary schools, in special schools, children need far more assistance, far more visibility of somebody in control, far more assistance. And if we don't have that, things can go awry, as we've seen. It's a clear lapse of quality trained staff. Sometimes the people have the skills. They were there before. But if we don't have the right people at the top, these things start falling apart. And what we are calling for in special schools, and we've done a lot of work as Naptosa with our special schools and our principals in special schools, is let's look at the people and let's assist them by showing them how good schools work, and let those principals also assist. Because very often in the department itself, we don't have special school experts. And you know, Chandler, we very glibly say special schools, but there are so many different types of special schools. Every one of them is different because they're looking after a different need, and that needs a different type of discipline from the teachers, the helpers, the assistants. And they have normally large staffs. So we are saying, let's learn from those who are doing well.
Yeah.
That is the only way, because the department itself cannot really give the guidance that those schools need.
Let's also look at the crime spree affecting North Coast schools. I mean, this has raised questions about security measures also implemented in some of these schools. How can schools and communities also work together to enhance security and protect educational institutions from criminals?
In Nhlanhla, it's an area I know well, being from KZN myself. But I want to tell you that it is an enormously difficult ask to simply get people to assist schools, because they themselves are fearful of the very criminals. And sometimes it's youngsters running around. And the only way we're going to win this is if the schools, together with the community, together with the police, together with the department, are working on a solid plan going forward. If one of those parts is not there, it tends to fall apart. Because often schools are within communities. It is the community that first sees things going wrong. If they are not there and vigilant and willing to participate in solving the problem, you're not going to get it done. If the police are simply absent and just never there when you need them, it falls apart. But then it comes down to the school itself and the department. They have to play their role. Schools cannot shrink back and allow criminals to take control, because schools are supposed to be safe havens for those children there. And for many children, it's the only safe space. If that space is no longer safe, then we are all in trouble.
So with an increase in violent crimes in schools, including 7 learners who were killed in the first quarter of this year, what role do you see Naptosa playing in also addressing the root causes of violence and creating a safer learning environment for students?
Instantly, our role is sometimes on the periphery. And yet it is such an important role, because often we are not directly part of a solution except through our members. And what we do is we first look at our members and to try and get our members trained better and more aware, so that participating in solutions for a particular problem, they know more and they know better. Just in this year, 2023, we've had about 7 webinars where we've brought people in, experts in various types of crimes, from school-related gender-based violence to just bare criminality, where we are talking about safety things like fences and so on, and knowing if you are in an area that is prone, how to keep yourself safe and your learners safe.
Right.
So ours is to help our members become more aware, more involved, and part of the solution.
So I also want to zoom into the kind of involvement involving teacher organizations like yours. As the executive director of Naptosa, how can teacher organizations then collaborate with law enforcement agencies, communities, and other stakeholders to address the underlying issues which are contributing to crime in and around our schools as well?
First of all, sometimes we are the first to hear of a problem, in that teachers sometimes don't want to report issues even to the police. And we must then take that role where we protect the teachers, but still we go to the police and we alert them to what is happening in a particular area. That's one way. But the other way is also that we can't divorce ourselves from community issues. We are part of the community. And when there's a community crisis, we must be there. Our voice must be heard. If not through our members, then we ourselves must be physically there as the leaders of unions and representatives of unions. And we've played that role, sometimes successfully, sometimes there's hostility too, because sometimes people see the unions as part of a problem, particularly when teachers have been involved in things that go wrong. Then you've got to tread very carefully, but there is a role for teacher unions to play and to ensure that they remain part of the community at large.
Mr. Manuel, thank you very much for your time. That's Naptosa's Basil Manuel, and thank him for exploring these critical issues with me